Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep and the Mining Podcast. Today's guest is Trevor Jones, who works for Lynx Global Intelligence, where he's actually a co-founder, who are a software provider helping mining explorers and producers capture ESG data at that asset level. Trevor holds a MA in International Security from the University of Denver, and sits on the Colorado Advisory Committee of the US Global Leadership Coalition and the Board of Directors for the Global Chamber of Denver. He's focused on making complex global systems consumable through technology, obviously within the mining industry. And he's going to talk to us about his company, what they do, and obviously his technology and how they help mining companies with their ESG. He's also going to be speaking at the upcoming Minds and Money event in London, which is at the end of November. So obviously be sure to reach out to him, obviously after listening to this episode, but he's going to give more details at the end of what he's going to be doing at the conference. So that's welcome, Trevor, to the podcast. How you doing, Trevor?
Doing excellent, Rob. Thank you for having me today.
No, I appreciate your time as well. So as we always start these podcasts off, I just wondered if you can give us a background about yourself, a little bit about your career, how that's developed to what you're up to, obviously, today.
Yeah, happy to. You know, I grew up here in Denver, Colorado. So I'm one of the last few remaining natives here, as we like to say, but got a ton of growth in our state that we're really proud of. So grew up here, have watched it change. I was lucky enough to go back to grad school to get an advanced degree, I think, as you mentioned, here in town at the University of Denver. So we have a fantastic foreign affairs school called the Joseph Corbell School of International Affairs, which really focused a lot of my attention on social systems and conflict and behaviors and perceptions in society. And, that all told net at the end, put me in a position to start to kind of look at some of these systems. ESG is kind of what we tend to call it in our industry at this point, but started Lynx originally as a consulting firm in political risk and security. And now we've really moved on to software specific activities only for the mining industry, and we've been doing that for about 3 years now.
Okay, great. Just wondering if you can tell the audience a little bit about the company, obviously what you do within the mining industry.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Rob. So, essentially Lynx helps miners aggregate ESG data from the site level. So we're a little bit different than other platforms that involve a lot of question asking, kind of from top management or the C-suite. We really put a tool on the phones and tablets of geos and techs in the field, so they can log ESG information, much in the same way that they've been logging health and safety information, or indeed geophysical information, for decades and really hundreds of years as miners, right? So we're just kind of augmenting some of the digital processes on the ground at the mine site. And again, it's all about giving miners the ability to upload event data and also external data sets around that asset level site. So it's a bit different than some of the other things we see out there. But again, just trying to get away from spreadsheets and notebooks. Even though we really love those sometimes in mining, it's time to kind of digitally transform, and we're here to help and support that effort.
Yeah, certainly. So I just wanted to just go in, I suppose, a little bit more detail about obviously the software. I suppose what else is unique about the software, and how do users actually use it? Obviously, you just mentioned it's mobile, but just wondering if you can just give a little bit more content around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing we're really proud of in terms of the Lynx software right now is it's been used either in a subscription-based way or a pilot-based way, everywhere from actually none of it near the Arctic Circle all the way to southwestern Ethiopia. So we've really developed a global platform that's useful in many, many different markets. And we're a bit data agnostic. And what I mean by that is, we have clients that are logging wildlife. We have clients that are logging human rights issues, investor relations meetings. I mean, the kind of spread or breadth of what's going on with ESG is well captured by a platform that doesn't just focus on, let's say, tailings and water, even though, we can absolutely bring in that type of information. So, really taking a broad-based view, the complete E and S in ESG, if you will. And then again, it's all about allowing the folks that are actually on the rock face at the mine site, who are otherwise responsible for ore body information, sampling, drilling, all kinds of other things, just to be able to have a tool that's easy to use. It works without an internet connection, for example, in some pretty austere places, like I mentioned. And so it just gives mine staff, community managers, environmental managers, the ability to upload those events in situ, and really that's important for preventing greenwashing, right? If we're talking about auditable information right from the mine site, that's very important. And then we're starting to hear this transparency word quite a bit in mining, which is really great to see, of course. But again, we're a bit agnostic to that. I think we're really just trying to help miners support, organize and put their data in a form that they could use later on, whether it's regulators or in an IR context. They can start to use those reports kind of as they wish after the data is organized from the site up.
What are some of the changes around ESG in the obviously mining sector that I suppose you've seen over the last few years? And obviously, I suppose you're collecting a lot of data as well. So yeah, just wondering if you can just give us a little bit of content around some of the changes, like I said, that you've seen across the ESG.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I have to praise our partners and our adopters who have taken more of an advanced kind of digital transformation type approach. Again, we might be comfortable with spreadsheets and notebooks in the field, but there are those that have taken a bit deeper, more holistic look at how to just organize this data in the first place, right? So I think that's one change that we've seen, and that's very positive from our perspective. But again, to speak to the breadth of information too, I think traditionally or in the last few years, we've thought of ESG really in terms of carbon, in terms of emissions, which of course is paramount, right? But there is just a number of other kind of line items or aspects that we can begin to pay attention to. Things like labor, things like rights, social license to operate, of course, has always been the most important thing for many companies in certain jurisdictions. And so, we've seen a bit of a deeper engagement with that. Things like regreening, things like biodiversity, these are all aspects that we're starting to include in kind of the corpus of what ESG really means. And that's really positive. I think, emissions can be tough in terms of getting scope 1, 2, and 3. And I think things like your regreening or biodiversity can sometimes be easier to measure and certainly easier to present, both in terms of compliance regulation, but optically in terms of an IR sense too, right? I mean, we can start to express the opportunity on the ground rather than just the risk. And it's just a shift in mindset that we're seeing. And I do see the ESG narrative all over the place, whether, we were at Future of Mining here in Denver a few weeks ago. And of course we have Mines and Money coming up, which we're very excited about, sponsoring and presenting. So we're just starting to see this ESG narrative really, pop up in a lot of spots, and in a more realistic way that has less to do with, greenwashing or debating what ESG is, and just getting down to the nitty gritty of getting the data right.
Yeah, and is there a reason why you focused on the mining sector?
Yeah, it's a great question. When we were, we started out as a consulting firm, as I mentioned, and we served a number of industries at that point, shipping, agriculture. We were just kind of bouncing around a bit, and I think we realized that the ESG, the desire to transform in terms of sustainability, but also security in a number of areas, is there in mining. So there really is a desire to look at new tools, to understand best practices. How can we improve? And I would say maybe that wasn't quite there in other industries. And we also realized the risk is fixed, right, where the ore body is. Unlike shipping or maybe some other industries, it's harder to change physical asset locations. And so, of course, it's just the geophysical reality that we have here on Earth. And so that all, I think, is fascinating to me personally, but also we look at the market demand for critical and rare earths. We look at some of the supply chain issues, and if you kind of just suss it all out, it really leads one to focus on mining as really just a paramount. It's so important that we get this right, for a transition to a green economy, get these critical minerals in a sustainable way, but also a way that works materially, and that to us, I think, is our mission and our goal, and really what attracts us and magnetizes us to mining.
Where do your sort of customers operate now, and is there a particular type of client that you're working with or have been working with?
Yeah, absolutely. We really, at the moment, we love one of our nickel companies. I won't name them for privacy reasons, but up in Sudbury, they may hear this and get the shout out. But we are geographically agnostic. It's interesting. We don't serve a lot of US based customers just because our regulatory regime is really developing around ESG, whereas perhaps some of the EU regulations, with the corporate sustainability due diligence disclosure stuff that's coming out, it becomes more important on the European side. But yeah, we look at Canada. The platform's in Spanish as well, so we have ongoing pilots in Latin America. And then size-wise, we love working with our juniors and our mid-tiers, just because the feedback is really one-to-one on the platform, and we can kind of form and shape things in a bit more of a rapid and customizable way for smaller companies versus some of the majors. So
yeah, and I suppose what challenges would companies have to then say, look, they then approach you with their challenges? What are some of those challenges around ESG to then you provide solutions for them around their ESG?
Yeah, I'll paint a really specific picture from one of our partners. So, they had a few geos in the field logging all kinds of information. Again, things like inspections, wildlife. But every time the geologist would want to report back to headquarters, they would email the CEO. And so if you put yourself in the position of that CEO, and later on we need to look at maybe some water effluents, or we're reporting on some aspect of water availability at the site. Well, he's going to go into his search bar in his email and type in water, and you can imagine we've all been there, right? It's unbelievable the amount of data that is just thrown at us every day. So to organize that in a way that's cogent and available and communicable to other stakeholders is really the main, I think, pain point at this point. Because again, mining's been doing the work of ESG, logging these things in various formats. I mean, talked to a mid-tier the other day who has over 15 different departments reporting to their head of ESG. So again, it's all about organizing what can be a kind of messy or overwhelming data outlet at some companies.
Is ESG important for operations, finance, or even both of them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that the uptick in the narrative around ESG for finance. I do think there is a hunger to really provide metrics that matter. Like, how do we actually measure these things in a way that's going to value or discount an asset in the future? And that's an ongoing talk and debate narrative. So definitely, we'll be rolling out some mock-ups of an investor relations module at Minds and Money, and we're quite excited to get feedback from the investor side on what they'd like to see, aggregated information on their asset dashboard coming directly from the site itself. So if we can get there into that kind of connective tissue in industry, I think we're going to be doing a really good job. But certainly for operations and even on the exploration, before mines start producing, there's definitely a need to log and have an auditable, traceable record of some of this information. I would say we don't necessarily know how that information is going to be used in the future. I think it can be on the compliance regulatory side. It can also be for insurance. It could be for again, for finance, trying to achieve incoming revenue, based on positive ESG metrics that are being presented to the investment community. So I think there's a range of ways that this will pan out. Again, I think if we take the view of helping to get the data organized and just in the right lane and categories, we are looking at some of the global reporting standards as well, and those are really important just for kind of how we categorize those events that are happening on the ground. But yeah, it's important on both sides, and what it means to you is going to depend on, it's kind of where you stand is where you sit with ESG. I mean, you may put a massive precedence on water, but not on social issues, or kind of vice versa. But if you talk to miners, I think, there is a genuine notion that we're going to try to figure this out as a community, and not greenwash and be transparent, and that's just going to increase productivity and efficiency, lower costs, and be good reputationally moving forward too.
What about regulations and permitting? What are you seeing globally from obviously some of your research?
Yeah, absolutely. So certainly what's happening with the European Commission right now in terms of that due diligence directive is going to be quite important in terms of how that trickles down with the various countries' laws for permitting. So that's one thing to track. Here in the United States, I think we see a very long permitting process and a long road ahead for companies that want to get involved in lithium, for example. You see continued resistance for even just Thacker Pass or kind of well-identified projects at the moment, and so that's going to push permitting times out. But there's other positive jurisdictions. I won't throw out any names, but I think we see movement towards shortening permitting because of the awareness that we need to move away from fossil fuels into the critical and rare earths that are going to drive our more sustainable looking economy moving forward. So there are those forward-looking actors. I think Spain's had some recent kind of movement in that direction. But again, I don't want to pick on certain jurisdictions. I will just say that mining companies should pay attention to what's happening in Europe, and then there's other experts I think on Canada and Australia that could probably speak to those permitting cycles individually.
Yeah, certainly. Lastly, what's the outlook for Lynx Global Intelligence over the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, we're expanding globally. So, we're getting very active in Latin America, also looking at some African assets and properties that we're helping companies start to log this information around. So getting involved in some new markets, certainly. We'll be growing our team a little bit. We'll be bringing on at least another developer, and also all kinds of advisors that have to do with things like looking at those compliance and regulatory regimes and that kind of thing. We just finished raising money a few months ago. So I guess thankfully, because we all know no matter what you do, how hard asking for money can be or raising money is. But we won't be doing that, I think, for the next 12 to 16. But the idea is really to get to a critical mass of customers and partners and perhaps raise again. But yeah, the main thing we're interested in, Rob, and I would just put this out to the wider community is feedback on our tool. Of course we're focused on growing the high multiple SaaS opportunity that Lynx is for our current investors. But the way to do that is to be hyper focused on our customers, right? And so that can come from the individual, geo in the field who's just giving us information about what they need to see on the platform, all the way up to some of the pilots for majors that we're developing that, the breadth of functionality you would struggle to wrap your mind around, because we're trying to do things like social sentiment analysis and this type of thing, right? And so we're advancing technically, in terms of social license and sentiment, and we'll also start to look at some nascent early data models. Machine learning might be the term some would use. We kind of shy away from that because we're mostly interested in just getting a little bit predictive about what could happen in terms of ESG moving forward for certain companies. Again, that takes a critical mass of data. So working on that feedback and gathering partners from our different jurisdictions around the world. So we'd love to talk to you out there if you have any need for ESG organization or data management on the ground. It's an ongoing process to kind of develop this and shape this for our clients going forward.
Yeah, Trevor, really appreciate your time in educating our audience around ESG and your technology, which I'm sure will be beneficial to a lot of our listeners. And as I mentioned, you're going to be at the Minds and Money event in November. You mentioned off air you've got a stand. You're working on you're on a panel as well.
Yeah, we'll be talking about what exploration companies are doing well. So again, looking at that opportunity side of the coin versus just the risk, which of course we're all concerned about risk primarily, but definitely there's great work being done. I won't, name drop it all right now, but we will at the conference, cite specific examples of a few companies that are really just doing a great job, not just optically. So it's great to put pictures on your website. It's great to work on community infrastructure. That's fantastic. There's another level of getting into the nitty gritty of measuring outcomes. And again, there's some companies that are doing a great job of that. And we'll talk about those as case studies in London. We're really excited for that.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you again. If our audience obviously wants to reach out to you, obviously they can catch up with you at the Minds of Money conference. But for those that are listening, if they want some more information, obviously about the software, and if they might have any questions, how can they go about doing that? What social media platforms are you on?
Yeah, we're on Twitter at Lynx Global Intel. Folks are welcome to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Again, all about feedback. This wild world of ESG, I don't think anybody's, has a cogent dictionary level definition of what ESG is. So we can all talk about it. We can talk about what's important. We can talk about how data technology can serve some realistic goals to improve efficiency, productivity on the ground. I think that's, would love to talk to anybody about that in the community as well.
Yeah, we can include those in the show notes below. So people can obviously reach out to you, ask you any questions, and obviously hopefully catch up with you at the Minds of Money event in November. So like I said, really appreciate your time. Hope the audience enjoyed that. Obviously ESG, it is one of the main topics that the industry is talking about. Obviously it's very important, and obviously Trevor's just described software that can obviously help you with your ESG in obviously your whether you're a junior miner or even an operating mine. It can certainly help you with data collection and whatever you need that data for. So please feel free to reach out to Trevor, ask him any questions. Appreciate your continued support. Hope you can share this episode amongst others in the industry from all obviously around the world. So I obviously really appreciate your continued support. So until next time, happy mining.